Okay, I'm going to teach you how to use this graphic organizer to demonstrate that you can take a word you don't know and break it down into its component root words, the prefix, the base, and the suffix, and figure out an approximate idea of what that word means. Then you'll write that in this spot down here, and then you'll get a chance to come up over here and compare it to the dictionary definition to see how close you actually got. And if you did it right, you'll usually find that you're pretty close. So we're going to start with a word that uses prefixes, roots, and suffixes that are on our current list, and that is the word incredible. We're going to come back to the part of speech in a little bit, and I'll tell you why later. So let's start down here, and we are going to come up with our prefix. And so if you remember from our list, actually I think you learned this last year, the prefix that you learned, one of the prefixes you learned last year for the word not is the prefix in. So let's come over here and type in not, because we learned last year that in means not. So that should be familiar to you. Now if I look at the word, if I take in, if I take that out, the next part that I have is cred. So come back down here and I'm going to type in cred. So I'm going to think about that for a minute as I record the rest of my, what I have left here of my word, ibble. And that sounds to me very much like a word I know, and that is the word able. Ibble, able. I can think of some other words. Incredible is the one we have up here. Invisible, movable. Now that's A-B-L-E instead of I-B-L-E, but they both kind of mean the same thing. So I'm going to guess that ibble and able are similar. Let's go back up here to the base word cred. That one's a little more unfamiliar to me. So I have to figure out what I think it means. And so I'm thinking of words, for example, you might know if you go to church, you might know the word creed, so something that you believe. You might know credulous, or maybe you don't know credulous, but it's a word that means somebody who believes things very easily. So cred means to believe. And if you didn't know that in the end, you do have that word on your root word list, so you could go look to it. So now I have my different parts here. So incredible, not believe, able. So sometimes I think when you're coming up with your own definition, which you're going to write over here, it's easier if you start with a suffix. It makes more sense when you say it in English. Not able to be believed. So the suffix comes before this. Not always, but sometimes when you're putting it together in a way that makes sense, it's easy to start with the suffix. So not able to be believed. Okay. All right. So if I go up and I check in the dictionary, what is the dictionary definition of incredible? Well, it means something that is very hard to believe. I looked this up earlier. Something that is very hard to believe. Okay? So you can see that those two definitions are pretty similar. So I was able to take this word, break it down into its three parts, guess what these parts mean, or in this case, look it up because it is on my list, and I was able to make a pretty good guess. So had I not known the word incredible, I would now have a pretty good idea of what it means. And the reason I saved part of speech is because, as you read in an article, one of the main functions of a suffix is to tell you what part of speech that word is. So in this case, this part of speech is an adjective. It's a word that describes something else because, as you see on your list, I-B-L-E or A-B-L-E signifies to us that that word is a describing word. It's an adjective. So there you have it. This is the graphic organizer that you can use to demonstrate that you can take a word, break it down into its root words, and come up with a definition.